Reliance and Disney, it appears that their merger is now one step closer. But I keep going back to, and it's important that we talk about how Sony did not pan out. So you never know with media and entertainment space. There are too many slips between a cup and a lip. But let's understand what's happening with with Reliance and Hotstar Disney at this point in time. We know that Reliance is looking to buy at least 50 to 60% stake in Disney's India business. If that goes through, Reliance would be the majority shareholder in the merged entity and perhaps one of the biggest OTT players in the country.
No perhaps here. I think the perhaps is clearly out of the window, because if the merger goes through, we are looking at a total ad revenue split by market share to the tune of close to 45 to 50% for this combined entity. Now, what we know for a fact is that the India business of Disney Star has been valued at between $3.8 to $4 billion. About 60% of that is likely to be owned by Reliance, right? So, I mean, there are various reports, some suggesting 50, some saying 60. But data right now suggests that even if they were to own anything between 50 to 60% and their own existing investments in Viacom 18, in Sports 18, in Jio Cinema, in the merged entity, Reliance is likely to own a much larger chunk than 60%. Because the Disney Star business in India is valued at about $4 billion. If Reliance were to invest anything between $2.2 to $2.4 billion into that merger, they own 60% of Disney's existing value, and then their own libraries and their own audiences and their own revenue gets added. So overall the pie becomes much bigger. Now, what we also know for a fact is that there are going to be 100+ channels. There are going to be 2 solid OTT apps, and then imagine the kind of merged libraries of the 2 enterprises, because Jio already has access among its own Viacom 18 library and the Colors library and the sports rights that it has by way of cricket broadcast rights. It also now has rights for all HBO content, which includes Succession and Game of Thrones. Even though these are old series, these are still series which people keep coming back to, and new audiences keep latching on to those series and keep watching them. And it has the BBC library already. Add to this the entire Walt Disney collection. Add to that the entire Marvel collection. You're talking about a huge operation of international content on one side, and then Star's own bouquet of regional channels, Colors' own bouquet of regional channels, all getting combined. Disney Hotstar still continuing to hold some cricket streaming rights. Jio Cinema continue to to hold ICC cricket streaming rights. Sports 18 continues to hold broadcast cricket rights. So there are 3 big buckets that this merged entity is going to be leading in. International content on one side, sports content, cricket dominated on one side, and the entire regional bouquet on another side, and 2 well-to-do OTT apps in the middle of all this. I think we are looking at a very, very fine step moving towards monopoly of the Indian media industry. And unless, going back to the Sony Z story, unless there is somebody who comes either to the rescue of Z or somebody who wants to partner with Sony and have one more large entity in the media, entertainment and sports business set up in India, we are definitely looking at Reliance monopolizing the space.
All right, Reliance monopoly, they're likely to pan out extremely very, very soon. It could be as soon as perhaps a year's time before all the, all sorts of regulatory hurdles are cleared, because from here we'll start all the regulatory proceedings. And we've seen that in case of Sony Z. It's taken over 2 years, could have been under 1 year had it not been for all the SEBI proceedings. So maybe next 1 year or so?
I think well within the next 1 year, Shweta. I think we are looking at a few months. We are not looking at anything exceeding 1 year. So there are not too many regulatory hurdles for both entities to tide over. Z was a very different story, because there were a lot of other, conflicting regulatory challenges accruing to businesses outside of the core entertainment business or linkages to the entertainment business. In the case of Disney Star and in the case of Reliance, I don't see regulatory hurdles springing up. The Competition Commission of India has already given the go-ahead. I think it's just a matter of one final round of negotiations, signing the paperwork and stitching up the deal and going ahead with the merged entity.
And, correct me if I'm wrong, Reliance is perhaps one of the nascent entrance into the media and entertainment space has been here for less than a decade or so,
Yeah.
and now is
Yeah.
perhaps the most dominant player of them
But
all.
we know Reliance, right? Reliance gets into any industry only because it wants to disrupt it, it wants to carpet bomb, and it wants to go after scale. It doesn't get into niche businesses because that is not the Reliance DNA. So the fact that Reliance
big or
did
go
enter,
home.
yeah, I mean, go big and walk yourself happily to the bank every time. The fact that it enters a business or it enters a market is only because it sees scale and it sees its own appetite to consume that scale and really, you know, get businesses to reach that scale, which others find fairly unimaginable.
All right, and there is no bigger scale than this. Reliance Disney India, as I mentioned, one step closer to the merger, could happen within a year's time from now, making Reliance Industries one of the biggest media and entertainment player in the country.